Now we start from Ukraine, Russia. Tensions continue to rise in Ukraine's Kharkov region, where local officials say attacks on civilians have intensified. According to Vitaly Gantchev, head of the Russian-installed military-civilian administration, Ukrainian forces have doubled their shelling of liberated settlements since late 2024. He claims Ukrainian troops are targeting civilians in an attempt to pressure Russian forces. Gantchev has described the situation as extremely difficult, citing daily drone and artillery strikes on homes. Meanwhile, Russian forces have carried out a massive attack on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, resulting in power outages across parts of Kyiv. According to Ukraine's energy minister Svitlana Grinchuk, efforts are underway to minimize the impact of the damage. According to Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko, at least 12 people were injured during the incident. Firefighters responded to first fires at a thermal power plant following multiple explosions. Tensions continue to rise in Ukraine's Kharkov region, where local officials say attacks on civilians have intensified. According to Vitaly Gantchev, head of the Russian-installed military-civilian administration, Ukrainian forces have doubled their shelling of liberated settlements since late 2024. He claims Ukrainian troops are targeting civilians in an attempt to pressure Russian forces. Gantchev described the situation as extremely difficult, citing daily drone and artillery strikes on homes. Meanwhile, Russian forces have carried out a massive attack on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, resulting in power outages across parts of Kyiv, according to Ukraine's energy minister Svitlana Grinchuk. Efforts are underway to minimize the impact of the damage. According to Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko, at least 12 people were injured during the incident. Firefighters responded to fires at the thermal power plant following multiple explosions there. Tensions continue to rise in Ukraine's Kharkov region, where local officials say attacks on civilians have intensified, according to Vitaly Gantchev, head of Russian-installed military-civilian administration. Ukrainian forces have doubled their shelling of liberated settlements since late 2024. He claims Ukrainian troops are targeting civilians in an attempt to pressure Russian forces. Gantchev has described the situation as extremely difficult, citing daily drone and artillery strikes on homes. Meanwhile, Russian forces have carried out a massive attack on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, resulting in power outages across parts of Kyiv. According to Ukraine Energy Minister Svitlana Grinchuk, efforts are underway to minimize the impact of the damage. According to Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko, at least 12 people were injured during the incident. Now we are joined by Ross Feingold. He's a political analyst, joins us live from Taipei. Thank you very much, Ross, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, how do you interpret the claims of increased civilian-targeted attacks in Kharkov region, and what might this mean for the trajectory of this war?
If Russia is going to continue to attack civilian targets in Ukraine, it's no surprise that Ukraine is going to continue to target civilian targets in Russia. So this works both ways, and it's taken a long time from the start of the war for Ukraine to be willing to do that, and also for the Western countries that provide weapons to Ukraine, for them to be on board with Ukraine pursuing that kind of strategy. But times have changed over the last few months of the war, and Ukraine is willing to do this, and it does damage morale in Russia for sure. It's humiliating for the Russian military and for the Russian government, and ultimately President Putin as well. But at the same time, we also have to keep in mind that although these kinds of attacks on civilian targets within Russia do damage and hurt morale and are humiliating for the Russian military and government, it doesn't change the facts on the ground insofar as the amount of territory Russia is holding in eastern Ukraine.
And in your view, do you see any fatigue or exhaustion from European allies in support of Ukraine now?
We're not really seeing that yet. And the focus always needs to be on the main European military and economic powers, countries such as Germany, France, United Kingdom, Italy. And there are certain countries in Europe that have been skeptics all along about providing Ukraine with this amount of military aid, countries like Hungary. And now there's a new government taking over in the Czech Republic, which has also been skeptical. The new incoming prime minister has been skeptical of providing aid to Ukraine as well. But for the most part, the European countries remain united on this issue. Will that change in the near term? Probably not, but they do have to reconcile their views with President Trump's pressure, frankly, to bring about a ceasefire or a long-term peace agreement.
And in your view, how effective are further sanctions on Russia, and also India being in the picture now? India is asked to by U.S. or pressured by U.S. to lower the crude oil purchases from Russia. Do you think this will be effective?
The broad sanctions targeting Russian companies, financial institutions, individuals, including the wealthy business leaders known as oligarchs, obviously that has not stopped Putin and Russia from continuing this war. So there's been wave after wave of sanctions from the United States and the European Union and other countries over the past 3+ years, but it doesn't stop the ability to wage the war. Russia still has customers for its energy. Europe, frankly, still buys some, but obviously the big buyers have become China and India. And President Trump recently increased tariffs on Indian goods as a way to pressure India to stop buying Russian oil. So far, India has been reluctant to do that, and China has continued to buy large quantities of Russian natural resources. So at least in the near term, it appears that this financial lifeline, and it really is a financial lifeline for Russia to be able to prop up its economy and continue the war, at least in the near term, that doesn't seem likely to change.
And do you think that the consequences, are there any consequences to recent Ukraine's remarks about a Russian shadow fleet?
The shadow fleet has been a reality throughout this period of war and sanctions, and it's been, again, part of that lifeline that allows Russia to bring in foreign currency and frankly, a large amount of money to prop up the economy and the military and finance the war, and as well as other government expenditures. So it's not a secret. Everyone knows about this shadow fleet. The ships can be identified, and then new ships enter the shadow fleet. So it's constantly a game of hide and seek as well. But Russia's ability to use the shadow fleet to ship its energy resources, again, that's going to continue as long as there are customers around the world. Then Russia's going to find a way to deliver a product to those customers.
Thank you, Ross, for sharing that. And now I would like to also welcome Major General Gigi Dwivedi to our discussion. Gigi Dwivedi, thank you for joining us again. Do you think there is any exhaustion or fatigue for support of Ukraine in this war? Major General, you might be muted here.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry for a little glitch.
No worries.
Definitely, because the war has now gone on for about 3.5 years, and it is in state of stalemate. And there is a battle fatigue on the battlefield. There is a fatigue among the allies and partners because there is no consequential outcome. And neither the way the war is going is not likely to end up in any decisive outcome. So therefore, that fatigue among the partners and allies is quite obvious, and also fatigue on the battlefield amongst the soldiers who are fighting on both sides is also obvious. So I think that as President Putin is in no mood to end the war, so this state will continue. But as far as Ukraine is concerned, and President Zelensky has stated in no uncertain terms that kind of support he is expecting from West and America is not forthcoming. And therefore, if that be the case, it will be very difficult for Ukraine to sustain this war, because Russia has more stamina than Ukraine. And I think either the European allies and America comes more forthrightly to support Ukraine. Otherwise, it's not in Ukrainian interest that the war can be carried out